Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to our London system series. So in this series we're following this London system from White's perspective, and today we continue our series with the London system against the Dutch defense. So the Dutch defense, I've separated, at least in my head, I've separated this London system basically in two variants. Your opponent can choose to play the Stonewall Dutch. It means black will build this e6, d5, c6, really a firm and compact position on light squares, and then after potential d5, knight to f6 and knight to e4 will simply try to build the attack around the e4 square. So there is also another variant of the Dutch defense. There is this Leningrad Dutch, in which black will try to play the move g6, bishop to g7 and something like d6, e5, which will be similar to the King's Indian, where black will search the e5 pawn breakthrough, followed with f4, e4 and similar ideas. So these are basically the two things after the move f5 that black can do. There are also some other lines with maybe d6, e6 and bishop to e7, but it's similar really to the Leningrad, as the main goal still remains the e5 pawn breakthrough. So that's why, as I said, we should separate this Dutch defense only on two things, the Leningrad Dutch and also a little bit this Stonewall setup by black. So today, as I said, we're continuing the London system against the Dutch defense. We'll play today against the Stonewall Dutch with the bishop to e7 passive setup. Then we'll also, in the continuation of the series, we'll analyze the active bishop to d6 setup by black. So if you have followed my my opening preparations on my YouTube chess channel, I always recommend you that you should watch this series. Every opening that we study, please watch them from the beginning, from the introduction video, part 1, part 2, and so on. So as said, we're doing now this the London system against the Dutch defense, and let's see now the first setup that we should build with our common bishop to f4 idea, which is usual, of course, in the London system. So f5, here knight to f3, knight to f6, and now bishop to f4. Here black builds already this the Stonewall setup. We play simply e3, healthy developing move, and now d5. Now, in my opinion, you should again, if you have followed also this Slav defense series, whenever you see that your opponent is building this very nice fortress on light squares, I think we shouldn't play the passive move c3. It is playable, of course. You will not, as I always like to say, you will not lose immediately the game because you played the move c3, but it's simply too passive. Basically, most of the times we're playing the move c3 and we'll build our knight to d2, bishop to d3, or bishop to e2 setup, like in the common London system. But here my recommendation is simply to go c4, because we have to break the Stonewall Dutch. We have to break this fortress that black has built here on light squares. So that's why my recommendation here is to play the move c4. Even if something like bishop to b4 happens, still we can cover with knight to c3, and after potential bishop takes c3, it's not a problem that we have the double pawn structure, as this pawn can always be traded for the d5 pawn. So this double pawn structure wouldn't be through the whole game. It will be only temporarily. So that's why I don't think that black can gain something after the potential bishop to b4 move. So as I said, here bishop to e7 is a possible continuation. We'll also analyze in the continuation of the series a more active approach of blacks with the move bishop to d6, and now knight to c3, and here c6. So that's the main setup that we're facing today in our series. And now my recommendation is simply to continue here with the move bishop to d3. First of all, we have to get a control of the e4 square. The problem is now we cannot battle immediately against this e4. Black will probably cement the knight on e4 if black plays this move immediately. My recommendation is not to take immediately the knight on e4 with the bishop or the knight. If you take with the knight, of course, we get also the fork on the bishop and the knight. So that's why you should also play something like bishop takes e4 after f takes e4 and castling. White has some troubles on the f file. So that's why we have to be patient here. And the first instructive chess game that I wanted to show you today, it's a game played by Anton Korobov against Aleksei Pridorozhni. And here my recommendation is this move h3. This is a very tricky line now for black to handle, because what we want to do is to break the position with g4. So that's our main goal. That's why this bishop to d3 idea is a very important one to memorize in these types of setups, in this Stonewall setups. Now g4, you see after f takes g4, h takes g4, and knight takes g4, the h file would be opened and we would have a clear target. It's the weak pawn on h7. So here in the game, knight to e4 was played. So this is a common idea in the Dutch. As I said, we shouldn't take this knight out immediately. Now we have queen to b3. If queen to b6 happens, again, we can retreat with the queen. The queen is now a little bit out of game, and we could try in some occasions to play c5, b4, b5, a4, a5, because now our main strength is of course the bishop, the starship bishop, and we should support the bishop's direction with our pawns. And now I think we could have a very pleasant game after potential queenside attack. So that's why here after the move queen to b3, here king to h8 was played by Korobov's opponent, getting out of some tactical possibilities. But now it's really time to break the position with the move g4. That's, as I said, my recommendation to play against these types of setups. In the game, queen to a5 was played, and now rook to g1, simply supporting our attack. We have knight to d7, and now c takes d5. It's sometimes very important to undermine the pressure a little bit, and also really crack this fortress that black has built here. And now you see we have e takes d5, and now it's really time to open the g file. That's our main goal with the rook to g1 move. And the problem is now for black that still black cannot attack the king immediately. Even if bishop to b4 again happens, I think we have again a pleasant game after bishop to e4, d takes e4, and now knight to e5. You see this knight will get very active into the game. If you take out the knight, then this bishop is very active. So again, black has really some trouble. So after the move g takes f5, knight to f6 was played, and now knight to d2, competing finally with this knight. You see black is building through the whole game the attack around this centralized e4 square. We have knight to d2, and now king takes d2. Here knight to e4 was played, but again I'm pointing out again a similar idea, bishop to e5. Now this bishop comes into the game. And I've mentioned it also in the introduction video, our main goal, our main target, the clear target is the weak e5 square. Here in the game, bishop to f6 was played, knight to f6, and now very nice tactical shot here by Anton Korobov. I'm not sure how many of us would see this move. It's really a top grandmaster move, but here Korobov simply get this other rook into the game. It was a beautiful chess game, and now queen to b8 with the immediate checkmate threat. So that's why black had to get the queen into the game. But now queen to g7, king to h5, and now knight to e4. Again, a nice deflection motif. If you take, you get checkmated here on g5. If you don't react correctly, then we have also some knight to g3 fork ideas. So here king to h8, rook to g4, king to h3, and now rook to g1. In this position, Korobov's opponent resigned because there's nothing you can do. If you move up the king again, then you get checkmated on h1 and similar ideas. So, but let's go back. As I said, our main target in these types of setups is the weak e5 square. The problem of black setups in the Stonewall setups is after potential outpost by ourselves on e5, you see there are no more pawn moves that could kick away a potential outpost on e5. Our main strength is after the potential knight to e4 move that we can still, of course in long terms, not immediately, because there are always some dark square problems with queen to h4. If you weaken the pawn structure in front of the king with the move f3 immediately, but as a long-term plan, getting the knight somewhere and maybe f3 to kick away this centralized knight on e4 is also a nice strategical idea. So as I said, our main target is the e5 square, but I really liked here Korobov's approach, h3, g4, rook to g1, and you see because the pawn structure in the center is so static, the position is so static in the center, so no pawn moves are possible here in the center. It's sometimes even possible to stay with the king in the center like Korobov did here. So the king was really not endangered, although it was a weird position with this move king to d2. So let's see now another example. Again, we have this Stonewall Dutch setup, e3. The other instructive game that I wanted to show you today, it's a game played by Vladimir Georgiev against Dario Dutina. Here, bishop to e7, again this setup, bishop to d3, and now again h3, g4 preparation. So knight to e4, queen to b3. That's a very important move, which leaves us really now the flexibility to castle queenside or to castle kingside. The queen is out, the king will stay a little bit further in the center, but the most important thing is that the queen to b3 move is more correct than the move queen to c2, because then we could face some problems, bishop to b4 and queen to f5. Then the knight could be overloaded. Now after potential bishop to b4 or queen to f5 combination, we could still protect our rook with the rook or knight on c3. So our main plane remains, our main goal is the g4 pawn breakthrough. King to h8, again g4. We have knight to d6. Here Dario Dutina played a different approach. We have c takes d5. Again, this releasing pressure idea. We have now e takes d5, and now again rook to g1, knight to e4, and now we have g takes f5. Again, we're opening the g file. Knight to c3, we have b to c3, b takes c3. It's very important to recapture here with the pawn, not with the queen, because we want to have another pawn that could roll on, that could again challenge really this fortress that black is always building on light horse. And I hope you realize we have, I think, really broken now the Stonewall, although the king is still in the center. But as I said, the problem of black is that black can never immediately attack the king, because the center is so static. We have a perfect control of the center because we have the bishop on f4, the pawn on d4, and also the knight on f3, which are controlling the e5 square very well. So it's very important in chess to centralize your pieces and then get the powerful control of the center like white here did. So bishop to f6 was played, knight to e5. There are also some tactical threats. For instance, let's just imagine one position, rook to g4. It's of course not possible. I wanted to show you just maybe one tactical shot. Here, rook to g4, rook to h4 if the position allows it, and then knight to g3 after potential c4, and maybe if this diagonal opens against the king, you should always consider this kind of a tactic. If you could just imagine the position without the pawn on d5, and also maybe without the bishop and the queen here, I always, when I see this pawn on f5, I always consider this tactic, knight to g6. You see, there could be also some tactical threats. So in the game c5 played by Dutina, very risky idea to break the center, because your d5 pawn is a little bit isolated. Now queen to d1 was played by white, and now knight to c6. We have queen to h5. Again, I hope you realize again this tactical shot is the main threat, this knight to g6 idea. That's why here black get out of the range with king to g8, and now knight to g4, simply attacking the bishop. We have c takes d4, and now e takes d4. King to h8, you see rook to b1, and now king to d2. Again, a very tricky move here by white, simply hiding with our king in the game. b5 was played, and now rook to c1, bishop to d7, and now knight to f6. We have g takes f6, and now bishop to h6. That's a really great preparation here. Rook to g8, and now queen to f7. It's basically game over because queen to e7 was played, but now bishop to g7. If in this position black resign, if you take rook takes g7, then rook takes g7. But it's really not important now to analyze this game. It's really what happens. If that happens, it's really important to get our main setup with this queen to b3 idea, h3 g4, then staying a little bit with the king in the center, because it's not a problem to stay with the king in the center when the center is closed. And I hope you realize the white has here in both of these cases really a great game. So as I always like to say, the games that I'll analyze today will be in the description below, so you can maybe analyze the whole game, see also some other sidelines that are possible, but I think we can cover many of the sidelines in this video. So here's another game. Again, we have this similar setup. Here knight from b to d7 is sometimes black's preparation. Now when that happens, when you see that black has built here this very passive setup with this knight, here I want you to really memorize one game and one line that it's really important to realize here, because now there is really a problem here for black, as white can proceed here with the move c takes d5. And what are the problems? If you take e takes d5, of course your f5 pawn is hanging, because the knight has cut off here the connection between the bishop and the pawn. So that's why here, after the move c takes d5 had to be played. But now knight to b5, you see how problematic this Dutch defense can be sometimes. Really, this is a really necessary tactic that you should recognize in your own games. Here, the clear target is, of course, the weak c7 pawn in the game, black castle. But now, knight to g5, we're simply attacking another weakness after another weakness. If knight to b8 or knight to b6 happens, then again, we have knight to c7. In the game, black tried knight to e8, but you see now, the game was basically over and it was move 11. Incredible mistake here that the black can make, and black was around 2465. So he is an intermaster and he fell for this. Knight to e6, we have queen to a5, and now king to e2. Again, the king stays in the center. In the game, the rook to f7 was played, and now knight to c7, knight to c7, knight to c7, the rook to b8, queen to b3. Again, we are attacking this weak d5 pawn. In the game, knight to f6 was played, but now rook to c1. We have bishop to d7, and now knight takes d5. In this position, black resigning, the rook is hanging. We can also build this queen and bishop battery on the light square. So it was really a bad game here for black. You see how you can make a mistake in an early stage of the game here. Knight to d7, and now c takes d5. It's already a bad game here for black. So let's see now another example. Again, this Stonewall Dutch setup, e3. The game, the instructive game that we're seeing now, it's Evgeny Podolchenko against Aleksei Potapov. Here, bishop to d3, bishop to e7, and now again this c takes d5 idea. Knight to d5 can be sometimes, of course, black's preparation, but now knight takes d5, and the problem is now that black has again to recapture with the c pawn. With the e pawn, it's not a possibility, because we'll simply grab the pawn, and that's the main issue now of the Stonewall. Again, I'm pointing out we have 3 pawns here. And we can still play our very powerful outpost on e5, and this outpost can never be kicked away by a pawn, because black has advanced both of these pawns, this d5 pawn and the f5 pawn. If black searches for an outpost on e4, again, I'm pointing out it's a possibility to kick away this knight with a potential f3 move. So that's a huge difference about our healthy setup, f2, e3, d4, or this really strange setup. And now our clear target in this position, if something like this happens to you, is always to evaluate the bishops, the relation between bishops and pawns. So even if black manages to get rid of, I've mentioned that many times also in the introduction, even if black searches for some trades of dark square bishop, it shouldn't bother us, because if we trade off the dark square bishops, then the dark squares are not protected in our opponent's position. So again, we should search for the e5 outpost. And I hope you realize, after a potential bishop trade, this bishop is simply bad, as it's blocked out by its own pawns. So even if after potential trades of bishop, again, I'm pointing out, and now knight to f6, knight to e4, we should always give up our bishop for the knight and then cement our knight on e5, where the knight can never be attacked by another minor piece. The bishop is really bad. It would be a bad bishop position. So that's why here, I think, in this position, white has a really comfortable game. So castling, queen to b6, queen to c2, we have castling, and now rook to c1. Very nice move, because we are preparing here a very nice attack on c7. We have a5, bishop to c7, queen to b8, and now bishop to b5. Really, it's really an attacking harmony with its minor pieces. It's really not a problem here to find the best next move. All of the pieces are very active, and as I said, our main, maybe strategical plan is here somehow getting rid of these bishops, getting also rid of the knight on d7, which is the key protector of the weak e5 square. We're searching always the e5 square in this type, and then simply cement our knight on e5. That could be really a great strategical idea. Knight to f6. Now when the knight has moved, now we can occupy the e5 square. So here, knight to e4, we have a4, and now bishop to b4, knight to d3, bishop to e7, bishop to e5. Again, we're playing simply around this weak e5 square. We have bishop to d8, and now comes this move, as I said, f3. That's the huge difference about our pawn structure. As a long-term plan, as I said, you cannot just play immediately the f3 move. You have to prepare this move, but you see now this knight will be out of game. The knight has to retreat, and now we're again attacking the dark squares. Rook to f6. We have rook takes, queen takes c8. The bishop, great sacrifice. Rook to c8, and now knight to f7. We have bishop to e7. This game is really over because there's nothing you can do. We can grab another piece here after trades of pieces. Now rook to c1, and from this point on, really white has a comfortable game. We have one rook and two minor pieces for the queen, still with opportunities to cement our knight. It's really a pleasant game because the queen doesn't have any more pieces on the board. The queen doesn't have any support, and I hope you realize this is really better game here for white. So I'm not going to show you the whole game. As I said, the game will be in the description below, so you can analyze maybe the rest of it. At the end of the video, as usual, we are having here a positional or chess puzzle, which you should analyze for you at home. And here it's really not a chess puzzle immediately, it's really a strategical plan. Please put this position, as I said, it will be in the description below, and try to find really the main strategy here. First of all, we should always answer the question, where are we attacking, where is our goal, what's our main goal, where are our attacking possibilities, what pieces are good, what pieces are bad. So that are the questions that we always should answer when we play chess. And I hope you realize this type of position, again, in the London, it was a London system against the King's Indian. The main strength now of the London system is always the dark square bishop, with this preparation h3, bishop to h2, and now it's really time to find the plan. So okay, this will be it for today. As I said, this was the London system against the Dutch defense. We'll continue also in the future now the London system against the Dutch, but with similar ideas and similar preparations by Black. If you want to see more about this very nice opening, check out my series from the beginning. Here is the link. And if you have troubles to play against e4 or d4, check out my King's Indian defense series, and also the hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.